Right.
Hello there, racing fans, and welcome back to episode 2 of the Countdown to Cheltenham series, brought to you in association with betting.co.uk. I'm your host, Ginger Joe, and I'm back again with Joe from JM Racing. And this week we're going to be taking a look at the novice chasers. We're obviously started at Arkle, and then we'll move up and take a look at some of the contenders for the Turners and the Brown Advisory as well. And then we'll finish off with the Champion Chase and our Ante-Post selections at the end of the show. But as usual, first things first, and most importantly, Joe, how are you doing this week?
Yes, very well, thank you. We're all living on a high after your blinding Ante-Post tip last week. That's almost halved in price, so that's definitely put the pressure on for this week. But there's plenty to talk about, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Plenty to talk about, and plenty of time for things to go wrong yet, Joe, as well. We were sort of in a similar position last year, weren't we, before we were struck with loads of injuries. But hopefully we'll continue in a bit of the same form. Before we do go any further, thank you for the response so far. I think we're at about 900 views for this video. Really, really grateful for everyone that's tuning in. And please do continue to subscribe to my channel and Joe's channel as well. And we have got 3 £10 free bets to give away from last week's episode, and we are going to do again the same every single episode moving forward. But this week's winners, we've got Robert Mitchell, Paul Senior, and Jeremy Stevens. So if you could email me at gingerjoeracing@gmail.com, I'll sort your free bets out for the Christmas period. But Joe, we're going to go straight onto it now, and we'll start, I guess, with the Arkle favourite, John Bon at 11-8. First of all, it's nice to have an English runner at the top of the market to start us off with, because after him, it's just a queue of the Irish Raiders lining up in the betting. But it's been so far so good for John Bon, though, Joe. He definitely sets the standard after winning at Warwick, and he's now won a Grade 1 at Sandown. And he's been very smart in the process as well. He's built into that frame. He was built to be a chaser. And what have you made of him so far?
Yeah, well, I think he's a bit of a bargain at £570,000. I don't think many people said that when he was bought, but the prices of horses these days and the amount of talent that he's got, it could work out to be a bargain in time. I think he was probably the second best hurdler, novice hurdler over 2 miles. Obviously, Constitution Hill was the best. And I haven't in a while seen a horse take to fences as well as John Bon did, from hurdles to fences. I think obviously the connection there with Douvan is there, but even so, I was pretty shocked and impressed by his chase debut. He was even better at Sandown, I think. I think Boot Hill is a decent horse. And if you look through the form of his first race as well, the horses that he's beaten, he hasn't beaten many horses, but the horses he has beaten have been decent enough. If you look at Monmoral, that horse won a Grade 1 at Aintree last season. West Cork won the Greatwood, and Boot Hill won the handicapper Ascot the time before as well. Unexpected Party wasn't a bad hurdler as well. So the horses he has beaten have been decent enough, and he's just completely blown them out of the water. I think he's definitely the right horse at the market. And I think Ireland will definitely win the Supreme, but I think John Bon will be pulling one back for the English in the second race of the festival.
Well, he definitely jumped really impressively. Like you said, he's like a nice, big, imposing type, isn't he? So, and he's hardly put a foot wrong so far as well. Physically looks ahead of anything else that's probably even going to line up at this point. And punters are probably going to say that the price is too short. But Joe, the only horse that has beaten him so far today is Constitution Hill, and he's been labelled an absolute freak, and rightly so. So his form is hard to knock. And I suppose if anyone's out there hasn't got a piece of John Bon already and thinks the 11-8 is too short, just give it a little while. Willie's going to unleash a few more runners yet, and you may see that price drift a little bit without him going too much shorter. So that may be the case. The only other time that he's had a challenge, though, was at Aintree. It was on his last hurdle start of last year. Al Fabiolo turned up fresh. He actually started closing on John Bon, but he made a bad mistake at the last. He still managed to close though and get within the neck of John Bon. But again, since then, John Bon's now gone on. He's a Grade 1 winning chaser. Yet we haven't seen El Fabiolo, and we're only 12 weeks out from the festival. That's just getting a little bit too close to comfort for my liking, that's for sure. Unquestionably the right favourite at this point, Joe. And I know you're on at bigger prices, much bigger prices, in fact, than what we've got at the moment at 11-8. But what did you think of Appreciate It's debut today? Did that put a little bit of scare into the betting slip that you've got at the moment, or were you quite comfortable with what John Bon's done so far moving forward towards the Arkle?
Yeah, I think Appreciate It is a little bit of an imposter at the top of the market, or near the top of the market for the Arkle, because you just think, obviously, I don't think either of us are too big on the stats, but when you look at the record for 9-year-olds running in the Arkle, it is alarming enough where it would put you off. It certainly has put me off, and he jumped well enough out in front. I don't think he was doing a lot, but when the other horse came up beside him, I did think he was beat. Paul Townend didn't get too serious, but he just kind of took a while to get going. You think he's got that big of a stride where if John Bon wants a turn of foot, Aidan Coleman would give him a squeeze and then he would go within a couple of strides. You just think, appreciate it might take a little bit of winding up, and you just think the trip at Cheltenham might be too sharp over not even the 2 miles, it's 1 mile, 7 furlongs and like 200 yards. So yeah, I just think he's far too short in the market. I don't even think he'll turn up to the race. I think he's definitely one for a bigger trip. I mean, you might have a totally different opinion, but I just wasn't totally convinced by him.
Well, similarly to you, I do actually think aim one is to just get him to the festival. We know how fragile he's been and how long it's taken him to get to the track in recent years. And he's only had the one run last year in the Champion Hurdle. Prior to that, it was the Supreme. It's really not enough racing when you're going to be taking on such a good horse like John Bon, who's clearly thriving, only going in one direction. But there are a lot of questions surrounding Appreciate It for sure. But I was quite taken by him today. I know on paper it says that you're probably going to need to find more, but I wouldn't look too much into that. Top Bander was all out and found his final gear. Like you said, Paul Townend didn't exactly panic though. He just gave him a little squeeze of his knees and he did pull away again, just like he did with Facile Vega, just squeeze of the knees and he had a slight turn of foot. But I don't think there's going to be too much of a turn of foot coming from Appreciate It. Like you said, he's 9 now. I think this is a sort of stage where I'd have expected him to be running at 2 mile, 4, 3 miles. And I think the camp would have probably expected the same. Things obviously haven't worked out, but I do think if he can build on it, which he should, and he turns up to the festival, he can probably serve it up to the John Bon most of the way around, but I don't think he's going to be getting the job done. And like you said, he's a real fragile sort. So backing him at 4-5 to 1 for a race like the Arkle is just really, really risky. Right now, I prefer John Bon, but he could definitely push towards favoritism if Appreciate It runs well again. I mean, effectively, you got a Supreme winner against a Supreme runner-up, so that would look like it's in Appreciate It's favour. But from what we've seen, that's probably not going to be the case. I'm not sure actually what the plan is with Appreciate It is. Maybe go to the Dublin Festival and then they'll take him to Cheltenham. But again, he needs to be hassle-free with no niggles, and it's just a big ask at the moment. I don't know what you think, Joe. The market seemed to suggest that he could actually go towards the Turners as well, yet he's a little bit short for the Arkle. Do you think that would be wiser? I mean, he's settled well enough, which was actually going to be my initial problem, but because he's settled nicely, stepping up in trip may not be such a bad idea, especially when he doesn't have a particularly large turn of foot to go to war with.
Yeah, definitely. He's one where probably a longer trip, everything happens a bit slower over 2.5 miles, which would probably help. I mean, there was nothing wrong with his jumping over 2 miles, but you just think against like the likes of John Bon might nick half a length every time. Over 2.5 miles, everything's a little bit slower. He can jump while he can gallop. And over 2.5 miles, he probably does have a high enough cruising speed where he can obviously kick on with a few furlongs to go, where it might get tactical in an Arkle. If you're looking at a Turners, usually it's run well enough where the best horse kind of usually wins. I think you wouldn't want to run in like a trappy, slow affair like the Arkle. And as I said, 2.5 miles, probably even further in time. But 2.5 miles, if he runs in the Turners, I think he'd definitely be up there or thereabouts near the line.
Do you think John Bon's going to take it from the front in the Arkle? We haven't really seen him pass a horse yet as well, Chase, and I'm sure he can. But do you think he's going to try and dominate from the front again? Obviously, it's only 2 miles. They get around there quick. He's not going to have any chance for errors. Not that we've seen one yet. But best horse, do you ride him from the front, Joe?
Yeah, I think it's a question of is anything going to want to take him on? He made all in his first 2 starts and he jumped well enough from the front. Sometimes you get horses where if they're following a horse, they do jump a little bit slicker. That wasn't a problem. And maybe in Cheltenham Festival 15, 20 years ago where you had a big field in the Arkle, I wouldn't suspect there'd be many more than 8 runners in the Arkle this year. Probably a few of them would be far too big a prices where they're going to be held up to run well. I think he should probably get an uncontested lead out in front and it's going to be goodbye from there and he's going to quick and clear, one would imagine.
And we're going to move on then to another one that I quite like then, Joe. Just as an each-way prospect only, though, people might not like this suggestion, but I do like the way Phil Daw won at Navan. He's 12 to 1 for this job. And again, Joe, he does go against the stats. He's only 4. He's turning 5. In fact, he actually turns 5 on the first day of the Cheltenham Festival, so it would be a hell of a birthday present if they could at least get some place money. But I just really like the way he managed to get it done at Navan on Chase debut. He beat Samoa, who obviously we know has got plenty of speed. We spoke about him quite a lot last year. And it was a really strong gallop, but he still managed to find a turn of foot. Being young, it was a hardy sort of race. And I thought that was very smart. The issue is John Bon. Obviously, John Bon's huge. And when they get to Cheltenham, John Bond's going to be 7, Phil Dawes going to be 5 years old, and Phil Dawes just going to look tiny against John Bond, isn't he? But I think they've been brave enough to go chasing early on. It paid off on their beginner's chase by winning on debut. And with Mighty Potter for the Caldwell's probably going to go for the Turners. This is going to be his target, and it may come a year too soon for him. But I think each way at 12 to 1 for an improver with that turn of foot could be a little bit of value there based on the current field. I don't think he's going to be good enough to beat John Bond, Joe, but do you share similar thoughts with Phil Dawes? May need an extra year?
Yeah, definitely. I was trying to think of a way to get Samwa involved in the countdown to Cheltenham. I talked about him every week last week. It wasn't to be last week, but here we go, Samwa. Yeah, he finished second behind Phil Dawes, and I think Phil Dawes, for a chase debut, jumped very well. He was uncomplicated. He kind of made all and then sat in behind. It was kind of a bit of a messy race, but Samwa and Phil Dawes really picked it up, turning into the home straight. And Phil Dawes didn't really put a foot wrong under pressure, which is what I like to see on a chase debut, because when the taps are turned on, you don't get the taps turned on that much kind of schooling at the trainer's yard. I think he really responded under the pressure and was chucked at the last 2 fences. That obviously worked. Samwa made the mistake at the last, which probably cost him a chance of at least being competitive up the running. But Phil Dawes, yeah, that was a mightily impressive chase debut. The kind of before the season, I would have said he might be one to step up in trip, even though he is young. Just because Mighty Potter is the favourite in the Arkle for the same owners, I'd say that probably wouldn't happen. So if you wanted to get a price on a horse that is going to be running next week as well and is even money to win, so you'd think the 12 to 1 wouldn't last one. It wouldn't be the worst each way bet, because I think this is definitely the target.
So you said next year maybe looking like he's potentially something like a Ryanair horse as well, when he's got a bit of open company into him as well. Joe, we won't go on to Al Fabiolo too much. We haven't seen him. Same with Dysart Dynamo. He's flashy. We know he could probably be anything. Flame Bearer is one that just doesn't interest me at all. I know a lot of people are going on about him waiting for him to reappear. I really do not understand what is so interesting about Flame Bearer. I think he's got a lot of form to real progress where he needs to be better than what he is. But how about Sir Gerhard for the Turners? He's been talked up quite a lot for this one, Joe. What do you think? Stepping up in trip, 2 mile 4, not necessarily stepping up in trip as such, but he's more of a 2 mile. He won the Ballymore, 2 mile 4 as a chaser. We haven't seen him. The vibes aren't necessarily too strong about him. It would maybe be a little bit of a worry though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's been injured and then he hasn't been injured and then he just hasn't been on the track. And you start to think, has Willie Mullins been training these on concrete this season? Because it is strange the amount of horses he has had out injured. I'm sure there's obviously nothing wrong with the training facilities, but it is a little bit concerning. So Gerhard, yeah, if he can jump a fence, he would have every chance. I think he's far too short in the market, considering I think it's still up in the air if they're going to go chasing or stick over hurdles, because you just don't really know. He kind of would be one that could step up and be a major force in the hurdling division, yes. Would he be easier? Would it be an easier race running in the Turners? Maybe, because if he can jump a fence, I think he's got enough ability, more ability, natural ability than Mighty Potter. So you would suggest that if he can jump a fence, this race would be winnable for him. But you just think, like we've talked about some of the Willie Mullins horses earlier with Appreciator, is he even going to turn up? Because he's just been in and out and there's been rumour after rumour, and I'm just slightly concerned. I definitely wouldn't be taking 5 to 1 at this point in time.
Like you said, the markets really haven't opened up by this point. We've got such a stack of horses in the Ante-Post market you can start taking a look at, but you've really got to be careful punting this year, especially like you said, Joe, not really knowing what the intended targets are going to be. We're moving on to Mighty Potter then. He's actually a horse I absolutely love. I put him up at 20 to 1 when he beat Sir Gerhard at Punchestown after quite a difficult Cheltenham Festival last year, actually, but he's built like a beast. And surely going to tackle 3 miles and probably a little bit further in time, Joe, as well. But he stamped some authority down on the ground when he won the Drinmore. He's got loads of scope. And even though he's probably going to stay the RSA trip in time, probably no point going up in trip just yet when he's got the gears for 2 mile 4 after what he did that day. Not necessarily got a turn of foot though, Joe. So although I love Mighty Potter, I do feel he's got to be ridden right to get the job done. I can't see him picking off horses. He's going to get better the further he goes. But 4 to 1, I do think is a little bit short, because I think he'll run again before Cheltenham and might maybe even get beat before running a better race again come the time of the festival. Where do you stand with him? He's obviously got a big engine.
Yeah, he's one that Jack Kennedy gave him a masterful last time out. He kind of, the horse did miss a few down the back, which was a little bit worrying. He got in tight to made a few mistakes. But the promising thing was when he made a mistake, it wasn't like a costly mistake. He didn't actually lose that much ground. He's real quick away from his fences, which is definitely something you need over this intermediate trip. And I think he probably wasn't the best hurdler last season, but he was good enough to think that if he did take to fences, that he would have a major part to play. And he has jumped fences quite well. I think the form of that latest run was pretty strong. If you look at some of the horses in behind, of course, Third Stripe Life didn't finish, but you've got Bambodge, who was very impressive at Cheltenham over 2 miles. So the right horses were in behind him that day, and I think he won well enough to suggest that none of them horses will be reversed in that form. Whether, like the Sir Gerhard we mentioned, would come out onto the track and give him a new test, that's to be decided. But at the minute, I think he's definitely the one to beat in this race.
I mean, if you look down the field here, Joe, as well, you've got Mighty Potter at 4, Sir Gerhard at 8, 3 Stripe Life at 10, who I know you like for the Brown Advisory, and probably rightly so. But then we got the same again. Al Fabiolo, Flame Bearer, Dice Art Dynamo. Phil Dawes going to be going for the Arkle. It's just a case of who do we think is even going to be lining up to take their chances against him. I wonder if there's going to be some that are going to drop back from the Brown Advisory. But it really is a case where we're coming towards Christmas now, and we haven't really got too much of a clue who's going to be taking their chances in the Turners. Before we do go on to take a look at the Brown Advisory, just going back to the Arkle, is John Bond still the likeliest winner for you at this point in time?
Yeah, in terms of across the board as well at Cheltenham,
Yeah.
if you ask me to put up one horse odds against John Bond 5-4, he's the one that obviously I wouldn't punt now, but I think he's the one that's going to take the world of beating.
And in the Turners then, are we just having at the moment to say Mighty Potter based on not really knowing too much else about the other opposition that haven't even been seen this year?
Yeah, probably him. There was just one other that I will mention. I Am Maximus. Moved from Nicky Henderson to Willie Mullins. Finished second on his yard debut for Willie Mullins. I think he did plenty wrong that day, but still managed to finish second. And I think the first was useful. He's about 14, 16 to 1. Probably one to keep an eye on as one that might just emerge and improve throughout the season. But at the minute, yeah, Mighty Potter should probably set the standard.
And importantly as well, Joey's managed to have a run as well, I Am Maximus, which is seeming to be hard enough in itself at the moment. Well, if we look at the Brown Advisory then, Joe, we've sort of got 11 to 1 the field at the moment. But I've really struggled to get excited about this race, to be honest, this year. But I thought you could kick us off with 3 Stripe Life after you obviously put him up as your first Ante-Post selection last week. Looks like he's probably going to take the 3-mile route. And you could probably excuse, obviously, that run that he had in the Dremel. Nothing was obviously wrong with the horse. It was unfortunately the saddle slipping. But take it away, Joe. You quite like him, don't you?
Yeah, very much so. Probably less so that David Russell obviously won't be guiding him now. Has rode him throughout his career, really. Of course, happy retirements to Davy. Jack Kennedy, you assume, would take over, and that's probably no bad thing as well. Steps up to 3 miles. I really think he should. Not because I'm biased and I've already got a nice slip on him and a bit of money awaiting if he wins. But I just think everything might have happened a little bit too fast over 2.5 miles. And when he stepped up to 2 mile 5 furlongs over hurdles, he improved vastly from the form he showed over 2 miles. He wasn't too far off winning the Ballymore after all. He was beaten about 4 lengths. That was on very heavy ground. He stays all day. He's jumped a fence well enough. And it doesn't take anything flashy to win this race. It's not a race that you wake up thinking about on the Thursday. I think it is waiting to see who's going to win the RSA. But I think he definitely jumps well. He stays all day. Obviously, Gordon Elliott, track record at the festival. There's not many negatives. He ticks plenty of boxes. I think he's still way too big of a price and probably is the most likely winner at this point, even though he isn't favourite.
That's the same thing, isn't it? It's really there, ready to be grabbed by someone. To real grab favoritism, a double price figure favorite in this race is quite unusual. Manila Cocoon is quite an interesting one. Looks like he'll probably find one too good, though. He just seems that sort of animal to me. I feel like there's not too much improvement in him yet, although he'll become a decent chaser. But he hasn't exactly got a turn of foot. He finished second at Cheltenham and also at Gorham Park as well. I just think he's going to find one too good again. I just think he's an obvious choice, an obvious selection to go for the Brown Advisory, so you can't really put him too far away. But 11 to 1, I still won't put anyone off necessarily backing him. But Joe, there's an animal in here I really like called Jerry Colomb. Probably needs real soft ground though. Jumps really nicely, a real big type, and actually looks a little bit like Brave Man's Game in stature as well. Pure chaser. And probably win loads over in Ireland. I actually watched that from the Ante a couple of days ago, and Johnny Deneen said the same thing. He really does need deep ground, but when he's got the deep ground, he's a really good animal. Cheltenham may not necessarily be as bad, but 14-1 still tempting. He is probably going to go over and win at Christmas at 5-4 evens, may even end up going odds on and half in price. So if they take their chance to come here, he definitely is a horse that is going to be on my radar, although I think he'll probably be better suited to the island courses or even Aintree, a nice flat track in April. I feel like he'd really thrive there, but he's definitely one that you want to keep on side. But again, things do need to fall right for him. I don't think it's going to be as soft as maybe he really wants it to become in this race. He would be my second selection at this time. I've probably got one still just about ahead of him. But Joe, is there anything else you fancy in the Brown Advisory? Again, a market that hasn't necessarily opened up too much yet, just the usuals in the Ante-Post market as they have been for the past couple of weeks and months, really.
Yeah, there's not too much to get your teeth stuck into. If you can pick the winner at this point, you will be richly rewarded. It's about 11-1. The field, I think Ballygriffin Cottage, 11-1. That's one that I can't really understand. However impressive he was, because the Skeltons and Harry Skelton usually gets a rush of blood at Cheltenham, and he usually just goes crazy. And he'll be sending this one on miles too soon. I think he's one that when he does kind of time it right, he's a brilliant jockey. But in the past, if you think of Shandlu and all these horses, you just sometimes worry about Harry Skelton on board a horse at the Cheltenham Festival. As for Joey Colom, everyone, including myself, was kind of laughing about how bad of a hurdler he was. Even though he was winning, he was a boat, he was this, that, he was every name under the sun. Twitter got right after him. He has proved that he can jump a fence, and that's kind of helped him a bit. I think he jumps a fence fast enough where he doesn't look that slow between them, if that makes sense. He's one that probably, as you said, if the ground got heavy and the stamina drawn out, he'd definitely be one to play a part. You would question, is the ground going to be as soft as it was this year, I should say. If it was, then he'd definitely have a chance. Ramillies, as well, as a horse I told you about, probably more for the National Hunt chase before he made his impressive chase debut. If they don't step up to 3 miles 6, then 3 miles probably would be the logical option. And this one, he is 14-1. I think he probably does want further, but that was a pretty impressive front running performance by Ramillies on his chase debut. So he'd be one that I just keep an eye on where he's going to go. Probably not one for an Ante-Post bet, but I think where he turns him next in a staying trip, he probably will take quite a bit of beating.
Like you said to me as well, didn't you? Said the Donnellys have obviously got Gaillard Dominio as favourite in the National Hunt chase, but he started off at 2 mile 3. He could end up in the Brown Advisory, in which case then Ramillies suddenly looks like a cracking bet for the National Hunt chase. But yeah, well spotted, to be honest there, Joe Boy. Well, another one that is a bit of an expensive purchase in the race is Classic Getaway for Sheveley Park at 12-1. Costs the same as John Bond, 570,000. Probably at this point would just about be my selection, just with the opportunity that there's a little bit more scope to come from him. He was pretty gutsy when he won at Gorham Park, but he definitely does need to jump better to go around and win a Brown Advisory. He's definitely got a nice engine, and the penny is now starting to drop a little bit with him. But again, he's another one, even though I haven't punted him just yet, I probably will have a piece of him actually at 12-1. He is the one that maybe has a little bit more scope for improvement, but he has to jump better. He can't go pushing himself through the fences, walking through those, thinking he's going to have some stamina to get up that hill, because he's just not going to have that finishing kick if that's the case. So he's definitely got to jump better at 12-1, and probably just about be my selection at this point. If I pushed you for one then, Joe, in the Brown Advisory, is it going to be Ramillies at an each way sneaky price, or not necessarily? I know, of course, 3 Stripe Life is probably...
Yeah, he's one that my money is already down with, and I'll happily keep it with him. Hopefully he'll be leaving Classic Getaway in his wake come Cheltenham Festival time, but probably I'll be proved wrong yet again.
Perfect. Right. Well then, Joe, we're going to the Ante-Post. No, we won't. We're going to take a look at the Champion Chase. Nearly got ahead of ourselves. So, Champion Chase, Energumene, even money. You've got 5-2 for Edward Stone. Shishkin at 16s. He's obviously not going to be turning up in the Champion Chase. Grenadine at 25s. Nubin Negra at 25. Shakin at 33s. Now, this one's not going to take too long to go through, Joe, is it? We know the reigning champions, obviously a scintillating jumper, a seriously quick 2 mile speedster of a chaser, just what we love to see. But I'm one that wrote off Edward Stone last year. I didn't think he was going to win the Arkle. I didn't think he was going to have a chance in a Tingle Creek, but he is just proving me wrong every single time, making me look silly. If I pick Energumene to go with the Champion Chase, is Edward Stone going to go and make me look silly again? maybe, but he's 5-2 now. It's a little bit skinny. I'd have had the double price figures, I'm sure, but 5-2. Can he get the job done against Energumene, or do you think he's up against it?
Yeah, it's kind of usually the champion chase is the creme de la creme. It's so interesting you nearly forgot about it, which kind of sums it up for me as well. Just because you just think Energumene, he's exciting, but he just kind of goes to the front and wins. And Edward Stone, I think Matt Chapman called him boring, and Alan King kind of took offence to it. But I can't explain why, but I do agree with him. He just kind of wins, and there's not much romanticism to it. He just kind of jumps well, and then he just grinds it out. He was very impressive in the Tingle Creek. I do have to say to myself, if you put Edward Stone out, and if Shishkin did what Edward Stone there, I would be losing my mind and waking up thinking about Shishkin in the Tingle Creek. I think the horse isn't the most interesting horse, but what he's doing is pretty phenomenal. And you just think, maybe is he going to dethrone Energumene? I think I've underestimated him enough times where I probably don't know how good he is. I think he does have a very high ceiling at 5-2, maybe a little bit of value over Energumene. Who knows? At the end of the days, it's not the race that I'm hugely excited about. I do kind of just hope something strikes in Nicky Henderson's mind where he keeps Shishkin over 2 miles. He comes back, redemption, flies up the Cheltenham Hill and wins the champion chase. I mean, that's probably not going to happen. He will step up in trip, but you just think, if only Nicky, keep him over 2 miles and win the champion chase.
I'm not going to comment on that part, but I'm definitely going to say I do give Edward Stone a little bit of a squeak, but Energumene's just so streamlined, isn't he? He just jumps fence, gets one side, the other, gets the job done. Look, Energumene's won Edward Stone now. He's gone and won the Arkle. He's now taken the step and won the Tingle Creek. He's doing the right steps by history to go on and win a Queen Mother Championship. He's probably not getting the credit he deserves as well, because he hasn't necessarily beaten anything that we put down as significance. He hasn't beaten Shishkin or Energumene. Okay, he's beaten a Grenadier team, but well, in fact, he obviously ran the Tingle Creek, but he beat Grenadier. Nothing really going to stand up there. I don't think he's going to come to Cheltenham with any sort of chance as well. So I do think Energumene's cut from a different category. I do, but I understand why the bookies are running scared of Edward Stone. He's continuing to improve now. Don't think it's really worth mentioning Grenadine or Nube Negra, to be honest, Joe. It's become a two-runner race. We're going to echo the thoughts that have been surrounding the YouTube categories and all of the podcasts around everywhere at the moment. It seems to be a 2-horse race until we can get Shishkin back, obviously, into the race as well. But we'll go straight on now then, Joe, to the Ante-Post selections. And before we do, I just want to revisit one of mine. So I put up Marine Nationale and Impervious, who have gone much shorter. But I just want to mention, I put up Run for Oscar at 33-1 for the Stayers Hurdle. Currently unchanged and still 33-1 available at the moment. But with more doubts now surrounding Blazing Car, with him being told that it's dodgy, with him being ready in time for the Cheltenham Festival, I just wonder if Charles Burns will now have a second look and potentially look at running Run for Oscar as an option back in the Stayers. He actually ran pretty nicely in the Betfair Stayers. He finished third, stayed on really well in really heavy ground. Well, it was soft, but it was borderline heavy, and he definitely prefers faster conditions as well. He has got an entry in the Martin Pike, which is quite well fancied for, but with Blazing Car not going to that race, it may be worth another look at Run for Oscar just about now at 33-1, still available for the Stayers Hurdle. I just wanted to revisit that one, Joe, while I got the opportunity before he then bombs out and runs next time. So he's 33-1 for the Stayers Hurdle. And I do think he'll give us a good chance for our money if Blazing Car doesn't actually turn up. But Joe, I went first last week. I think it's only right that we let you take the floor this time. What have you got for us this week? Sound nice and juicy?
Yes, hopefully. It's going to be a player in the Ryanair chase, and it's not going to be the most obvious horse in Allahu. I have a sneaking suspicion we aren't going to see this season. The injury returns, it gets getting set back further and further. We probably won't see him until, or we definitely won't be seeing him over Christmas and probably into the new year. And you just think, as much as Willie Mullins think he can ready a horse for Cheltenham first time out, we saw what happened with Appreciate at the Cheltenham Festival in the Champion Hurdle. He came into it fresh and he bombed out, finished 7th, beaten by Glory and Fortune, Sanoir, Zanahiyr. So you just think, is Willie Mullins going to do the same thing and put Allaho in the Ryanair first time out? I don't think he will. And then you get to the market and there's not a whole lot in there. And I'm going to side with the horse who ran today and was pretty much put in his place by Galopin de Champs. But the good news is for him that he won't be facing a rival as good as him for quite some time, and probably not even till the Ryanair. I think he gone well enough today, finished second. He absolutely belted, I think it was the fourth or the fifth, and that kind of knocked him back. He dropped back into fourth, and that was an uncharacteristically bad mistake for this horse. He does usually jump sound, and I just think he swerved Cheltenham this year to go to Aintree and win, and his form figures over 2.5 miles are unbelievable. The worst he's finished is fourth in the John Durham last season. Apart from that, he's either finished first or second. He's won multiple Grade 1s. I think he's going to be primed for this. JP is going to be wanting to steal some money off Michael O'Leary and Mr. Ryanair, just because this horse has kind of missed opportunities to run in these races before. I think he's definitely going to take his chance in it this time out. And if you look at the market after Allaho, I don't think he runs. Galopon de Champs, 9-2, doesn't run in this. Shishkin, I'm not convinced by this horse. Obviously, I alluded to 2 miles, or he's just not the same horse after injury. Blue Lord at 10-1. I don't think we've seen enough of him. Both Man's Game definitely won't be running over 2.5 miles. Edwardstone will be in the Champion Chase. Envoy Allen will be in the Gold Cup. So after that, you get down to Fakir Dudoi, who, if he runs, he could be, second favourite, because the 5 in the betting above him aren't going to be in the race, if my maths is correct. So hopefully, Fakir Dudoi, 14-1, more of a process of elimination more than anything, because I just don't think half of these horses are going to turn up. Fakir Dudoi will, 14-1. This is one that you wake up thinking about at 14-1. I've doubled him up with quite a few other horses, including Third Strike Life, who I tipped up last week. I think this could be some bets.
That'll be a hell of a move, Joe. Big brownie points if you can get that onto land come March as well. But you're dead right as well, because if he doesn't turn up, Allaho, he could fight for favouritism, couldn't he? Plenty of juice found in that one then, Joe. Well, I'm going to take a look at the Mares Novice Hurdle, Joe. And Lucia is the current 4-1 favourite, but I really don't like her at all, especially at the price 4-1. It's way too short. She's going to get lapped when she gets to Cheltenham coming off that race. I really don't like it at all. But the one I do really like here is Ashrow Diamond at 8-1 for Willie Mullins, the first Willie Mullins horse that's been put up in this series. 8-1 is really as short as I'll go. Ante-Post, to be honest with you, we're sort of breaking overall. We're trying to keep these double figure prices, try and find you some value, but I do think she's really good value for it on the basis that Lucia is the favourite, who I don't think has got a chance in lasting round Cheltenham at the Cheltenham Festival. She's another that side by Walk in the Park, the same as John Bond, the same as Facile Vega, so she's only going one way. And she went really nicely on debut at Wexford as well. She travelled really, really sweetly. And the team decided then to skip Cheltenham last season, but they did come over for Aintree anyway and take their chances in the Grade 2. And then she absolutely bolted it, won by 6 legs without hardly hitting anything off the bridle. She then went over to Nace on Hurdle's debut, stepped up again and won a 25 runner maiden really, really well. Jumped lovely as well, really taken on her first performance over hurdles as well. And that was before finishing third in the Dremel before up against my beloved Marine Nationale. And she ran a really good race that day. She was kept quiet out the back, was allowed to go about her business nicely, and she didn't finish too far away, 5-6 lengths away. And the fact that she went there at all just says a lot to me about the aspirations that Willie's probably got for the team. Now, they haven't got really one in the race at the moment, so I think Ashrow Diamond is the one that's going to step forward and really put her name into the Winners' Cup. There's loads that aren't probably going to run behind her in the market as well here, Joe, as well. So I think the 8-1 is just about enough value for me to get stuck into for Ante-Post. And Ashrow Diamond at 8-1 is my bet in the Mares Novice Hurdle. So hopefully, Joe, we can continue with a good form as well. They've all been cutting in price for all of our selections so far. Joe's put up Fakir Dudoi at 14-1 for the Ryanair. May not cut just yet, obviously. We'll probably wait, as Joe mentioned, on the news of Allaho, see what's happening there. But like you said, the vibes really aren't too positive around Allaho at the moment. Another one of these Willie Mullins horses that is a little bit up in the air. And my selection's Ashrow Diamond. I think she's going to really be tough to beat provided she gets to the Mares Novice Hurdle. She's got the best form on offer, and I personally think she should be a favourite ahead of Lucia at this point. So, Joe, that's it for this week. That's the Novice Chase and the Champion Chase done. We're going to come back again for another episode next week. But, of course, we've got Christmas in between now and then. So we're going to wish you, obviously, the festive luck over Boxing Day, Welsh National, obviously, the day after. But what are the plans? Spend some time with the family and then back loads of winners as usual?
Well, I wouldn't say as usual. At least I'll try to. Hoping Ahoy Senior stays in the King George on Boxing Day, because that would shut some people on Twitter up if I Tip this horse up at 40-1. He's burnt my fingers the last twice, but he's probably going to be the highlight. Trip to Doncaster over Christmas as well. So hopefully we'll back some winners there. But yeah, hoping everyone that is watching does have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we will be back to hopefully get rolling, get Cheltenham underway, and hopefully find some more value.
And there's your mention of Ahoy Senor, as promised. Don't forget to subscribe. We're going to give away 3 more £10 bets in next episode. Joe's channel link is going to be in the description below as well. Thank you all for watching. Merry Christmas to you all. See you all real soon.